each one of us are data producing factories. 20% of the world population is in our country, and therefore the 20% relevant data that is going to be created from now on is all AI fuel.
All in person, reassuringly human, and on stage. So, we'll come back to this, as I said, mind-bending ideas that are driving the colossal de-extinction project. But now let's move to something very immediate in our neighborhood, very important, and that is, again, the tech transformation that is taking place in India. And how do we bring together different stakeholders, government, entrepreneurs, technology? We have set ourselves an economic goal of becoming a 5 trillion, 10 trillion, economy. But how do we get there? What will give us that leapfrog to go from, as we were discussing with Pramod Verma, a 2,500 a year per capita income into becoming an equitable and wealthy society? The government has created a quasi-government outfit called Invest India, which is looking at this, looking at different pathways with pillars of focus that they are focusing on. And the CEO of this is a person who's been at the head of Intel India and is now leading Invest India, bringing different stakeholders together, looking at AI, looking at materials, looking at semiconductors, all the crucial pillars that is driving the shape of the world today, many of the geopolitical races. And so to understand how India is positioning itself in this changing world, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Nivruti Rai of Invest India, and along with her, my co-panelist and co-moderator, Ananya Mukherjee, who's the Vice-Chancellor of Shiv Nadar University. I'm very, very happy to have them both here on stage. Wow, this is the power of the sari, first of all. Thank you for this resplendent, gear. It's wonderful to have you here, Nivruti, and you, Ananya. Thank you for joining us. So I'll just start, Nivruti. I don't know if you were here earlier in the day, but we've been talking about many pieces of this jigsaw of our changing world, and you're sitting at the heart of it, in the complex heart of government, entrepreneurship, and technology. So just first up, as a quick window into your world, tell us what is the mandate of Invest India for India, and what is the goal? On that, we'll then pick the two pillars that we'd like to focus on.
Sure. So I would like to say that as Invest India, I'm sitting not just in the hearts, but the mind of the government and the country. And we have been influencing directions for what India needs to drive the growth. We talk about doubling the GDP by 2030. How is it happening? And what are the gaps? It's very important to understand where the gaps are before we start talking about, here are the positives and here is how we're going to double the economy. So as Invest India, my role is to draw investors into the country. And the way I do it is I become essentially part of their strategy team. When I say I mean Invest India. And we learn about the company because in the end, it's not the government who's investing money. It's the companies. So we are being proactive in chasing companies because we have identified what are the gaps of our country and what are the companies in which country do we have to bring. So I'll tell you, I just came back from Oslo and Paris, and we had a big conversation about AI. And I'm really happy to tell you, from nuclear reactors, small nuclear reactors, to, to generate the electricity for our use for AI, all the way to ammonia for agriculture, we were chasing all these companies.
Right. So, Ananya, I'm just going to bring you into the conversation. I just wanted to ask you one question, Nivruti. Earlier, we had Pramod Verma, who's literally the architect of India's Indus Stack. And he has a very nice phrase where he says the difference in approach of India to AI is that it's not oil to extract, but soil to grow, which is a very interesting metaphor for AI in India. You have been using a different metaphor, which is that you've said we are 1.4 billion data factories, What do you mean by that? It doesn't sound as sort of soft, but
Yes.
I'm sure it has a vision driving it. So tell us what you mean by that we are data factories.
Yes. So before I go tell you about us as Data Factory, what do I mean? What is the emotional connect to our country? I'll tell you that when I look at US is driving private sector to drive AI, and I like to call it their walled garden approaches within the company. So Google uses Google's data, Meta uses Meta's data, Amazon uses Amazon data. But are they sharing that data for the global good? The answer is no. When you go to China, China is all government driven. So even if you hear that there are companies driving AI, it's essentially governed by the government. So a lot of walled garden approach, but with the government, you get to hear China data when China wants to share, if China wants to share. Europe is more regulatory, so you keep hearing, GDPR, data protection, so a lot of regulation-driven AI approach. Our approach as a country is, population scale. When I was in Intel, we actually coined this phrase that India is driving population scale solutions using AI. So when I say India is driving population scale solutions for the greater good of the country, it is very important to know that each one of us are data producing factories. 20% of the world population is in our country, and therefore the 20% relevant data that is going to be created from now on is all AI fuel. So I like to say that our approach is population scale, larger good, and therefore 1.4 billion data factories are absolutely essential because we are looking at open sourcing, we are looking at leveraging. Everybody's so excited about DeepSeek, but DeepSeek is using ChatGPT to, they call it distillation. Distillation essentially means get a lot of information from ChatGPT and then reduce the number of parameters, reduce the amount of power, but you need a ChatGPT in the bottom. So what we are saying is, I'm also going to use ChatGPT, I'm also going to use DeepSeek, and I'm really happy that Bhavish from Truthrim is saying that he will build on DeepSeek also. So whoever, whatever you're building open source, India is going to consume because we have aspirations and plans for population scale AI.
So I'm going to come back to how we're going to use these data factories, what's the economic idea, but I just wanted to draw Ananya into the conversation.
Thank you. So, as the Vice-Chancellor of a university, what keeps me awake at night is the question of future of our youth. And what I hear on a daily basis is there's a lot of excitement about the new technologies in AI, but there's also a lot of anxiety. And so I would like to hear from you that about how our young people who are at a very high point of aspiration, they want to conquer the world. What does it mean for them? And the path to the multi-trillion-dollar economy, a multi-trillion, not dollar, multi-trillion economy, is going to do for them both the process and the outcome.
A lovely question. I'm going to start with just a very fresh, hot off the press news from BBC. There are these bacteria, there are viruses which are called antibiotic resistant, superbugs. Do you know that things that took a decade to discover in terms of hypothesis as to why this virus is becoming drug resistant, the Google's tool called Co-Scientist discovered the same hypothesis in 48 hours. Not just that, it also came up with an hypothesis that the scientists had not considered. Now, having said that, so keep that aside, do you know that the world has I mean, I don't even know the term. I think it was non-nillion. It's 10 raised to 31 number of viruses in the world. And yes, most of them impact plants and animals, but thousands and hundreds of thousands impact human beings. And each year, we just find few, at most best case 100, and there are thousands and thousands of viruses left undiscovered because of the human capability and the limitation. I really believe the opportunity for our youth is to leverage these tools available and uncover those viruses so we are not surprised and shocked by this COVID-19 that happened. That's one use case. The second use case I feel is, so it is very important to know that the jobs that are currently available for our youth will no longer be there. There'll be different kind of jobs. You know, there's somebody who was so good, you know, my friend here is a gaming industry czar, and you know, NERF, the neural radial field, can create an animation 3D. I can do that for molecules, I can do that for viruses, I can do that for traffic infrastructure. So I really feel all of the people who are so savvy, our newborn kids are doing like this for Apple phones, I want them to be able to discover, you know, these diseases. Make sure that, you know, there are opportunities for saving lives, for creating valuable, you know, quality of life for everyone. So jobs will be there, but they'll be different. And I understand change is hard.
Nivruti, two questions. You know, one, when you said this, I just wanted to say one thing in, you know, defense of the big companies, the big 4 or 5 that are really taking over the world, that Google DeepMind has made AlphaFold open source. So when you said earlier that it's not true that they're making their data available, it's amazing. Like DeepSeek has made it open source, Google has made it open source, and they are completely changing the world and opportunities. Pushmeet was saying earlier that 2 million researchers have used their platform to discover diseases that others are not working on, you know. So in all fairness, we have to say that. But two things. One, to go back to my question, that when you said that India's 1.4 billion data factories,
Yes.
it sounds wonderful. It is, you know, a sliver of an idea, but could you flesh that out?
Yes.
How are we going to capitalize, not we as in a nation, how are individuals going to capitalize on this? What is the economic model that even the government is thinking about or you are thinking about?
Yes. So, you know, I'll start with the government. When you think of AI, there are many things that you have to do. I'll call it layers. The layer 1 is understanding what is the infrastructure required for AI. There's going to be data centers, there's going to be power, and just to let you know that if you look at 1 trillion parameters that ChatGPT 3 or 4 has actually more, 1.7, you need a significant amount of GPUs. You know, something like 20,000 is what ChatGPT 4 has used, and 2,000 is what DeepSeek has used. 1 GPU consumes 300 watt of power. And 1 human being uses 1 kilowatt of power. So when you look at, you know, 1 million GPU hours, just imagine, you know, 300,000 people's worth of power is being used. So power is, once the 1.4 billion data factories, the next infrastructure is power. So we have to generate more power to power off these data centers that can then do the training. And so our country is pushing 500 gigawatt renewable. And interesting thing is, you know, when we were in France, my team is there, we were talking about data centers in space because, you know, can we reduce carbon footprint? So data centers, today India has only 3% of the world's data centers. Our need is 20%, because I said 20% data. So that is the first infrastructure layer that our government is considering. How do we generate power? How do we create data centers? I think the next lever that we have to create is the availability of talent. So today, 15% of the world's AI researchers are in India, 35% are in US. So if US and India combine, 50% of the AI researchers are in India. Our government is planning to continue to train our students as well as our college students. Niti Aayog has come up with, an AI standards, AI strategy paper. There is availability of platform that we are building. We are also looking at housing 2,000 GPUs that Ashwani Vaishnav just called out. So infrastructure layer government is calling out. And then we have 1.4 billion earmarked for investment in AI. And 2 billion, the recent budget called out in R&D, which really excited me, because R&D is an area where we have to invest. Our country so far was focusing on using AI, but now we are looking at building our own large language model, including our government.
So, Ananya, I'm going to draw you in. Actually, I'll come back to her. Why don't you go ahead? Yes.
Okay, so, just from what you said, that AI requires this whole other thinking around alternative
Ananya,
energy.
would you speak into the mic?
Around alternative energy, around how we manufacture talent, around how we structure data centers, whether it's going to be on space. So how is the thinking, if I just bring you back to Invest India, when you're thinking of strategies to attract investment, is it, are you looking at how these additional factors would be helped or not?
Absolutely. I think that's a lovely question. Talked enough about gaps. What I can tell you is when we go speak to companies, firstly, we show them a value chain of what they are building. What are the gaps that India has? What are the strengths India has? And the strength we call out is our R&D capability, our ability to scale, 5 million software folks, government's incentives, government's push and support. I can give you one example that I was in US working with a company trying to bring their supply chain into India, which they were considering Thailand and Malaysia. They had a problem. I will not be able to tell you what the problem was, but in 48 hours, we called our Minister of Commerce, and also Ashwani Vaishnav and basically Piyush Goyal and them. And in 48 hours, we resolved. So when you translate the problem and the need very precisely, accurately, rather than giving me an umbrella statement that India's ease of doing business is not good. I'm sorry, that's motherhood and apple pie. But if you tell me, I need this particular thing because I have a server manufacturing which needs this kind of an initiative, I need to make sure that I'm able to import substrates from Japan and I'm getting this challenge in import. I'll be able to solve it. So government is very strong and all of this is going in the direction of people are saying, okay, government has brought this Invest India, which is all private sectors, 30 years of semiconductors. Similarly, my team here has pharma experience, has oil experience, solar. So we're all speaking private sector and we make friends with private sector because we understand their challenges and then we can solve it better. So bringing us with the private sector lingo and understanding of challenges, you have me at hello kind of a situation because I get suddenly all meetings because when they say, okay, she's coming with 30 years of Intel, of which half of it in India, she has lived through. So it just makes it easier for us to, be able to help people bring in investment into the country.
So, Nivruti, I just wanted to bring us back to some of the things that you said. When we're talking about China, DeepSeek, China is famous for having very long-term vision, so even though our current reality is not as rosy as, say we are painting right now, it's great if we even have a game plan because, these things are happening very fast. And China had a game plan which was to go to America, get technology transfer, get knowledge, come back, bring up the Iron Curtain again, and then overtake the world, So that's really long-term thinking. In India, are you saying now with some of what you're talking about, is there a kind of long-term thinking? And in this, I didn't hear, Nivruti, about I get it that we have 5 million researchers. I get it that we need infrastructure. But I'm still not hearing from you a game plan for the rest of India, you know? And I'm sorry to focus on the gaps, but this still is talking about the top 10% who'll even know. When you said research using, deep AlphaFold or DeepSeek or any of it, that still is people who understand technology and can use it for science. We are talking about more than 60% of India that is just not part of the conversation. And how are we thinking about them?
Very good. So yes, we have lots of gaps. Let me just start with two gaps that are very important. One is, how many doctors do we have for a patient? Second thing is, I was recently in Norway, and I learned that the urea that our agriculture's farmers use is in the wrong way, which depletes the soil, and as a result, the produce is so much lesser than many of the countries that we talked about. So what are we doing? I can tell you there are many startups who are looking at building these bots who help the farmers in their languages. We have so many unique languages. So AI has three forms of data that it consumes. One is text and language. Second is voice and speech. Third is video. And there are technologies in all three that we are leveraging with our startups. So I said that our startups are not building AI, but they are consuming and building solutions to consume AI. So in agriculture, we have startups that have enabled 40% of increase in yield. Has this happened across the country? No. The claim that is 4,000 farmers have been helped. Similarly, there is AI for AI, Agriculture Innovation for AI, another startup who's looking at building efficiency again through the right watering, the right seed creation, etc. So yes, while we are also looking at agriculture, we are looking at traffic management. Bangalore's traffic, my friends, some of them are from Bangalore. Traffic is such a huge problem, and our traffic lights are using AI. Can we do more? Oh, absolutely. And then we are talking about semiconductor, and we're talking about space. So if you look at AI strategy that India has, I like to call it is from agriculture to space and everything in between.
Ananya, we discussed about women and,
Yes, yes. So speaking of gaps, the first three industrial revolutions kind of missed out on women's leadership, and I know that we've made some strides. So do you see now a different way of involving women, of leadership of women? And again, going back to Shoma's point, for the rest of India, not just the people like us who have the privilege of having the mic and the stage. Yeah.
So first of all, I must say, when I was walking up the stairs, very seldom have I had the honor of sitting between two very talented women. So thank you very much. I can tell you, since I have built AI for my previous company, there are four things that are very, very critical while you're building AI. One is bugs. It happens in every software that you build, and AI leverages hardware, but essentially it's software. So bugs, bias, manipulation, and malware. I want to tell you that when it comes to bugs, of course, there are many programmers who will solve it, but when it comes to bias, I think women will play a huge role. I can give you many examples from gloves being built, surgical gloves being built in US, exported to Japan, didn't fit any surgeons there because the Japanese hands were smaller. Then those things went to Europe, didn't fit in the women's hands. So bias has been there, from, I don't know, time immemorial. But if we don't have 50% of the population of the world representing your AI solutions, you'll always get it wrong. The example that my team was looking at, we have models that are worked on for collision avoidance, and the entire model is a male. So if accidents happen, everything is built for the male, so women will end up dying. So if we don't have ways to address these kind of variances, bias will happen, whether it's for Japanese men or it is for women. Another thing is, I keep on talking about voice. Leveraging voice also is a lot of clinical research trying to get emotions out of voice, trying to get sensitive details out of voice, and they have learned that all those details often come more in women's voice than men. So you will be missing out 50% of the emotion gathering and the voice modulation that is more accurate from women. Then I want to talk about manipulation and malware. I really believe that, men and women, and I love them both, have different strengths. But the strengths that women bring with discipline, I really believe that manipulation is often caught more by women, researchers than men.
So just, Nivruti, this was a wonderful and very angular take on how to bring women into the economy, so that was interesting, thank you. But I have not yet heard from you a game plan. So I'm understanding how we are resources for AI, We're resources even for the government or for big companies or startups. I'm still not hearing how people who are providing the data, which is really us, women, village women, farmers, that data is being used, but how are they benefiting from it? I get it in terms of solutions, but coming back to your data factory,
Yes.
what is, Pramod gave this idea, and I'd love to know if the government would back him on
Yes.
that, this Finternet idea, that if we are the new mining resource that is being mined, can we get a piece of the pie, So can our data become a wealth asset for everybody?
Absolutely.
Would Novama be managing all of us after that?
Absolutely. So, my approach, and, when I said US companies are walled gardens, I can say that because I am part of one of the US companies who did not have access to a lot of data, and we always struggled to build an AI solution because we didn't have data. So we were looking for where do we go, and guess what? We found the data haven in India, and we started working on collision avoidance. Now, we actually tried to build a platform where anybody's data, if somebody voluntarily shares that data, because we have technologies like federated learning, and there are many more beyond federated learning, where you can totally scramble, whether this data is coming from Shoma or is coming from Nivruti, but the data will go. Essentially, it's the juice of the data or a tiny little model that plugs in, and it pretends it's a data, but it's not. However, I'll tell you two things that have happened, and I have been witness to this. Singapore hospitals have connected with our hospitals in India and are leveraging people's data of blood pressure, a lot of blood-related parameters, and paying, I don't even know how many parameters, a Sing dollar for a bunch of data. If people are willing to share, then, and their names with it, we definitely have mechanisms that wherever the data is shared, I truly believe I see a platform that will be manning and watching all of the apps, whether you use WhatsApp or whether you use Facebook. It can be identity scrambler, so you can scramble who's using what data, but you can also make it available such that if somebody is voluntarily sharing the data, because if I have to choose that I will make $1 to feed my children versus keeping my blood pressure data secret, I would want to share my data, and I want to make that $1 extra. And the best part is Singapore hospitals is leveraging women, and they are sharing, some of them are sharing and making the money. And therefore, I believe we definitely have capability to build a platform where any amount of data that will be shared, and AI is going to come to the rescue of it. While everybody is worried about AI, AI can build a orchestrator across any app that you use, and if any of your data is being leveraged by that app, it can tell you or it seeks,
Payment.
payment from that app. So it definitely can be done, and it's actually in progress.
I mean, that's a fascinating idea of, micropayments for everybody who uses your data, but that opens a whole other minefield, and we'll be talking to Nita Farahani tomorrow and others, because that then just opens up surveillance, compliance, a plateauing of society. I mean, this is such a minefield of pros and cons, and yet there's an inevitability to it. So one does need to think out of the box, but utopia and dystopia kind of like, Ram and Sham and the Kumbh Mela, like they're literally joined at the hip. So very worrying, very optimistic. Ananya, some last ideas before.
No, so just this last point, it is scary though. I know that, it's possible to sell, for each person to decide to sell my data or not. But is this the way it'll, because then I can see, as Shoma already said, that it can lead to many different pathways. So are we better off thinking about the cons first, or, if this is going to happen, it scares me?
See, it's very, I don't know how to say that it's surprising for me that if without your knowledge, your data is being monetized is okay by you. But when I'm saying, in your knowledge, if you want to monetize the data, you can, it's being questioned. So, for me, it is a commodity. You can sell your produce. I have unused glass in my house I can sell. I can sell my clothes that are used or unused. But if I want to sell my data, it's being questioned, and all of the, societal information is coming. And I'm saying we are a country where we still have a lot of people who are struggling to feed the children at home. I'm just coming from Kumbh, by the way. Last night I reached, and I saw amazing belief in people walking. Every day I would see an ocean of people carrying their bags on their head, many of them without shoes. So I'm thinking, if this person can share the temperature of their body 30 days in a row for a pair of shoes, I bet you that person will share, or for a school education. So unknown, I'm sharing data, and everybody seems to be okay using WhatsApp. The minute you use WhatsApp and search for avocado, I believe that very soon somewhere you will get an avocado, advertisement. So I bet you anything you are doing, there are sensors, there are intelligent machines already leveraging so much of your data. I can tell you, once I was in a conference, and I will not name the company because I named once, and I think I shouldn't. Everybody in the world fits into as few as 500 personas. Each one of us fits into one of the 500 personas. The advertising, the marketing, the leverage, where you are fitting, which conference will you go to? It's only 500. And all of the game plan is for those 500 different personas, and each one of us fit. So I'm saying a lot of work and data is already leveraging your information to the level what color you like, what food you eat, what places you like, which airlines you go, which place you shop. I'm saying do it with eyes wide open.
That's a very powerful idea, Nivruti, to monetize our digital footprint, because you accurately said we are being watched on a second-to-second basis. And, a lot of the scientists here are talking about that next level of biosensing, when we are going to, there are companies and platforms and nations hungry for that information, hungry for our liminal information, what we are thinking, what we are feeling. And if that's an inevitability, it's real food for thought. That do we want to participate in it knowingly or eyes wide shut, because it's happening anyway. This is a new model of thinking of economy. It's almost like moving from feudal to, a democracy, from feudal systems to democracy. It's that bigger leap than that to think of ourselves as a mining resource, and do we want our royalty from it or not? It's I think, like you said, there's pros and cons, but it's a very powerful idea. And thank you very much, Nivruti. I would have asked you one more question, which is that you are heading this investment, but the investment figures for India are dropping both domestically and internationally. If in one line you could tell us why this is happening, that would be great.
Yes. So I just want to say, when you look at FDI figures, please don't look at year over year, 1 year, because each year a calamity like COVID can happen, Ukraine, Russia can happen, China +1 can happen, we could be getting Taiwan being flooded. So what we have to look at is over a period of time. And I can tell you, over the last 7 years, on an average, India got 70 billion. And we believe the next 7 years, on an average, India will get 100 billion. Why am I saying it? Because I'm working with industries. Last year and a half, we were able to get 3.5 billion. 3.5 billion just by Invest India efforts for 1 year. And I can tell you, they are focusing on energy, they are focusing on electrical and semiconductors, they're focusing on pharma and infrastructure. These are the 4 areas many industries are investing in us. And I'm very hopeful, next 7 years, I can tell you, 100 billion on an average. Our goal is to up it. This is what Velocity is telling us. Me and my team are working on acceleration. And one last sentence on the data part. I can tell you the Emperor of Malady author, Siddharth, is working on trying to see how cancer grows differently in different people. And it's like cancer in a petri dish. In each petri dish, he creates an environment for me, environment for you or many other people. And then he's able to study how the cancer is growing. Is eating more carrots helping, or smoking once a month, or drinking, or living in an environment, where different kind of air we breathe. I am telling you, if I have to share my entire life's worth of data for this research, I will do it, because it can save not just one life, many lives.
Thank you very, very much, Nivruti. That was fascinating. Of all the perspectives we've heard about what it means to be human, here's a new one. It means that you're a data factory, monetize it. Thank you very much, Nivruti. Some new ideas there. Thank you, Ananya.